The 2021 Virtual Business Conference, February 11th. Alan Cutler. Where do you want to be in 5 years?
It's my pleasure to introduce Alan Cutler. He's a USPTA and PTR Master Professional and a Senior IT Management Consultant. He's previously served as a USPTA National Board Vice President and a past president of USPTA Southern Cal. He's published internationally, nationally, and regionally, and he's won numerous awards, including the USPTA Industry Excellence Award. And he travels internationally, I guess conditions permitting. I'm very excited to have him here, and Alan, take it away.
Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome. This course is called Where Do You Want to Be in 5 Years and How Are You Going to Get There? And it's a career development seminar. Flip to the next thing. Again, my name is Alan Cutler. I call myself a failed retiree. I've tried to retire 3 times now. I've been unsuccessful all 3 times. My friends don't even take it seriously anymore when I say I'm going to retire. I'm working currently as a senior IT management consultant for Apollo Global Management. I'm in the process of replacing a state government's unemployment system, hardware, software, everything. I'm also a USPTA Master Pro and RPT Master Pro. I'm not PTR. RPT is a Spanish Tennis Federation, and that's enough about me. Okay. This course is to assist you in developing a roadmap for your career development for the next 5 years. The average person changes jobs every 2 to 5 years. So if you're below the age of 40, you're likely to change jobs probably 2 or 3 times, depending on when you change your job the last time. If you're between 40 and 50, you're probably going to do it once to twice. And if you're over 50, there's probably 1 more job change in your future. And I'm saying that as generalizations, but it's pretty accurate. So we're going to talk about the year 2026. Where do you see yourself in 2026? Will you be qualified for that job in 2026? Who will you be competing for those jobs? And will that job exist in 2026? And this last one is critical. Not only will it exist, but the world's changed in the last 12 months. And there are jobs that I had never heard of. I'm going to give you an easy example here. This morning, I got a invoice from one of my team members that had their office staged so that they could do Zoom. They didn't need to put a background on. And I thought, gee, I'd never heard of someone who stages an office for Zoom calls or for internet calls. So I thought that was interesting. I would pass that on. I don't think that job existed 12 months ago. Okay. These next 2 statements are 2 critical statements I want you to remember as we go through this seminar. They're going to be very unique because the reality here is the first one came from me, and it will be, if you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. And we're going to talk about how jobs make you look at what you do differently depending on the level. The second thing came from AJ Pant, who will be speaking tomorrow morning, who came up with this, that it is think like the owner. And these 2 things will really ring a bell as we go through this. I'm going to start with USPTA does a superior job of helping its members go from being a teaching professional to a head pro. And I'm not going to spend a lot of time doing that. If you'd like to talk to me about how to do that, my email will be at the end. Pat is easy to get hold of me. Everybody knows this. I'm all over the internet. The reality here is USPTA does a great job. Your division has superior resources of people like Pat and Kevin and Todd. And I could go through a list of people who can help you do this. USPTA offers education all the time on scheduling and programming of sources. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about that. I'm going to spend time talking about positions that are a little above that. So we're going to do a little bit of a self-evaluation here. And I said either write it down or make mental notes. People who write down goals are much more likely to be successful. This is a psychological thing. And it's important that you learn to do this. And I want to make it a point to say that you're welcome to make mental notes, but the simple reality is if you write down your goals and you review those on a regular basis, you're much more likely to accomplish them. We're going to ask questions about you as an individual to start this because you're going to make this happen. This is not about Alan or Pat or Kevin. This is about you as an individual coming up with a career development plan of where you want to be in 5 years and the things that affect those decisions. So I've listed some things that are very important. Are you married? Are you single? How might that affect it? Well, if you're married and single, you may have financial responsibilities and can't just simply quit a job and wait for the next one to happen. You may have to go from one job to the other with very little of a break. Do you have children? Well, or might you have children in that period of 5 years? If the ages are below 5 and you move from job to job, it may have very little effect on your family. If your children are high school age, this could be a dilemma, and it changes things and the way you have to look at it. So again, we're going to go back to if you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. Family often becomes part of the decision process. If you're in a position where you have to take a cut in salary, that affects your family. Or if your salary doubles all of a sudden, is that also going to affect your family? Okay? Is my significant other working? And I say this because if my significant other is working, how is this going to affect their ability to get a job? Even if they're not working and they're a stay-at-home partner, is my working a new job going to affect it? Because typically new jobs are not 40-hour-a-week jobs. And the kind of jobs we're really talking about certainly are not 40-hour-a-week jobs. Okay? What if my job, a new job requires relocation? You're in the southeast part of the country. What happens if the new job is in Texas or in Seattle? Can I just pick up my family and move? And we'll look at things above here again. How old are my children? Are they in high school? Are they in junior high school? Am I displacing my children to take the other job? The truth is you may not have a choice in today's world, okay? The last thing is based on this year. Do I have the discipline to work remotely or independently? Tennis jobs on court are not going to change. You're still going to have to go on court to teach tennis. If you're a head pro, you're going to be going to a court facility and doing it. But as you get above that job, only sometimes during the week, you might have to go to the office. At my old office, before what I'm doing now, half the staff goes in Monday and Wednesday. The other half of the staff goes in Tuesday and Thursday, and they work remotely. Do you have the discipline to do it? And I'll give you some generalizations. I am a baby boomer. I am over 60, and I feel uncomfortable working from home because I'm used to the office setting. Millennials, let's say between 30 and 45, they have no trouble doing this. They like the work from home, and they tend to be very responsible. The younger ones are not having an easy time with this because it's a lot of freedom. And all of a sudden, it's easy to say, I need to work this much time, but it's not happening. So as a manager, a senior manager, I can almost break it down by age who I'm spending time with right now, trying to make sure they're putting in their hours. So again, the world's changed in the last 12 months, and the upper level jobs sometimes aren't in the office every day. What do I like to do with my spare time? often external hobbies or interests can combine with tennis. So what's happened in the industry is as people have moved up, there aren't 5 head pros at every location. And so the competition for these upper level positions become different. I have a friend, Bobby Bernstein, some of you might know, who became a video analyst. He was great at it, but it was his hobby. It wasn't his profession. He worked for USDA's High Performance at the time. He was the best I've ever seen at video analysis. The simple reality was he turned a hobby into a full-time job. He's not the only one who's done this. There's lots of people who have done this. And so often you can look at an external hobby or interest that combines with tennis. We can't afford to have brain drain in this industry. And by brain drain, I mean we get people to a higher level position, and because they can't see a promotion route or a career path, they simply leave the industry. We can't have that anymore. We have to hold on to the best and brightest that we have. Okay? What motivates you? And this is a real interesting thing too, because I supervise a lot of millennials. So we're going to talk about baby boomers first. What motivates baby boomers? Oh, gee, money. I'm very motivated by my salary going up. I hope most of you are, but I suspect it's based on age. The second thing is power, or the perception of power. Folks, I'm a senior manager. I want you to know I have many layers of bosses. Power is a perception. It is not reality. Okay? Lifestyle. Do I make enough money to have the lifestyle that I want? I like to travel. I want to make enough money that I can leave for a month or two and not hurt myself financially. And the lifestyle I want is how much money I have to make. Welcome to what motivates baby boomers. Okay? Now we're going to talk about millennials. What motivates millennials? Family and friends. They are very motivated by socializing with their family and friends. Free time and experiences. And we'll talk a little bit about this because it's affecting country clubs right now. Millennials value free time and experience. If I offer one of my millennials a raise, they say thank you. If I offer them a day off, they're much happier with that because they can go out and do things. What we're finding is that millennials do not want to be told where to eat. This is affecting country clubs right now because country clubs, if they have a banquet room and you're required to eat a certain amount of dollar value per month at the country club, you're going to find millennials are going to rebel against this. It's something I hear a lot about. At the end of your life, no one will ever ask you if you could have worked more. I am the poster boy of this. I get given a hard time by a lot of my friends about this. I basically worked 2 full-time jobs from age 25 until 60. And the people who know me know that I worked as a full-time IT person. When I got out of school, I got trained as a computer programmer. I was done playing. By the way, I played for 5 years. I was okay. My body broke down, so I didn't last beyond the 5 years. I went back to school, got trained as a computer programmer, and continued to play tennis part-time and teach almost full-time. But the reality is, at the end of your life, no one's ever going to ask you if you could have worked more. Again, if you need an example of the bad person, I'm it. Where can you see yourself in 5 years? So I'm 60. I'm not afraid to admit that. 5 years from now, you want to know what I'm going to be doing? I'm going to be working part-time, and I'm going to be traveling part-time. That's where I see myself, okay? But this is not about me. It's about you. So dream big. Where do you see yourself in 5 years from now? Where are you now? Now dream bigger, because in 5 years, you're likely to have 2 job changes. And those 2 job changes may not relate to each other. I did not plan that my career path was going to take me off court. I didn't. That's the truth. I thought that I would always teach tennis, and I am teaching a little bit still, but my career path led off the court. At age 40, my shoulder broke down. I could not be on the court all the time, and I moved off the court into the office. And that first year that I moved off the office into the office, my salary really didn't go up. It was about the same as what I was making as, at that point, a director of tennis. 2 years later, my salary had doubled. Okay? Now, what's your dream job? You could have any job in the tennis industry, from being the president and CEO of Wilson Racket Sports, to being an official at ATP, to being the president of USTA. What is your dream job? And that's going to be different for everybody. And it's important to get a handle on what your goals and objectives are. What kind of education background do you have now? We'll talk about why this is so important. Do you have a high school diploma? I find most tennis pros have a high school diploma, although I will tell you some of my friends went to the tennis academies, and I'm not sure they deserve the high school diploma they have. Do you have some college? I would say, again, a lot of the people I'm seeing have some college at this point. Do you have a degree or degrees? And do you have certifications? And I'm really lumping certifications in here because of how important they are. If you applied at my former employer and you did not have a USPTA certification, you were not going to walk through the front door. You weren't, period. Okay? And so it's not just degrees that matter. It's also these certifications and training. Everything adds up. You want to be as well-rounded as you can as you move into, I'm going to call, management positions. So this is an exercise in minimum qualifications, and we'll talk about a minimum qualifications. This is in a medium to large size shop, someone that follows the law. So if you work in a state that's at will and you think you can fire an employee without cause, you better have a good insurance policy, because there is no such thing as at will. There's a federal law called the Employment and Development Code that you better follow, or you're going to be in court and you're going to be a lot poorer when you're done. So we're going to create requirements for each position. When I teach this live, I interact with the people and they come up with the requirements. I don't. I'm going to come up with the requirements for the job, and we're going to discuss them as we go through. And by the way, Pat, if someone wants to ask a question as I'm going through, please interrupt me, because some of this stuff is complicated, and I want them to understand that an HR person is who's going to evaluate the job application, not the head pro. Okay. So what kinds of jobs are in a larger shop? A receptionist, someone who answers the phone. This is the only job in the tennis industry I've never held. I wouldn't be good at it, by the way. A tennis professional, an on-court teaching professional, a head tennis professional, a multi-departmental manager, a senior manager, and a general manager. Now, I'm going to point out that there's something missing on this list. Anyone notice there's not a director of tennis on this list anymore? That position doesn't exist anymore. Or if it does, it's very limited. It might do it in a country club, but outside of a country club, it doesn't exist. It's a way to save money. So instead of having a director of tennis, they have multi-departmental managers, and that multi-departmental manager might be over tennis, pickleball, badminton. One of the examples I can think of is bocce ball, the spa, the aquatics, When I became a multi-departmental manager, I was over aquatics, tennis, equestrian. And by the way, I don't know much about horses, but what I did learn is what you put inside of them comes out the back end. Okay? So I hope that rings a bell. Senior managers could be a director of accounting, director of HR, and general manager is self-explanatory. So I created this list of minimum qualifications. It's not 100% accurate, but it's going to be reasonable. Now, I'm going to qualify this. There are 6 distinct areas of the country of employers, meaning the Northeast, the Southeast, the Midwest North and South, the Pacific North, and the Pacific South. And they are very different. We need to understand that geographically, employers are different around the country. The employers in the Southeast might be country clubs and HOAs. On the West Coast, there are no country clubs. So if you have country club skills and you're coming to Southern California, that's not going to do you much good. Okay, so we have to talk about the geographic differences a little bit here. So I'm going to start with head pro here. College, and I made this list. It's arbitrary. Head pro, college degree, desirable. It is not required. So as an HR person is going through your application, there are going to be requirements and there are going to be desirables, and they are not the same thing. If you have, if it's a requirement and you don't meet it, your application is going to be immediately pulled out of the pile. If it's desirable, you get points for having it, but it's not critical. So the head pro will go back to a college degree desirable. It's helpful to have it. It's not critical. Certification is required. There is no ifs, ands, and buts. Everybody on this call should have that. It's called USPTA. Communications and playing skills. I would say that those are required. How do you quantify those? By talking to someone or watching them on court. Continued education, required. USPTA requires you to do this so that when you go to a job, you can print out your educational report card and gee, there it is. You can document it, because if you come into an interview and you say, yeah, I did this, I'm going to ask you for documentation. Just like if you tell me you have a degree, I'm going to expect to see a copy of your degree. And supervision and budget experience. So as a head pro, you're going to supervise, let's say, a half a dozen people. You're going to need to understand some of that. You're going to have to be to do your own budget. It's unlikely you're ever going to have to do a budget from scratch. You're going to be to look at what's happened in the past and update it. So I'm not sure I think that's as critical as having the supervision experience. And we'll talk about why that supervision experience is so critical. The next layer up is multi-departmental manager, and I'm going to use the title leisure activity manager. This manager is going to supervise tennis and golf and the gym and aquatics, whatever else you have. At this level, a college degree is required. Supervision experience is going to be required, and this is not 5 or 6 people. This might be 15 or 20 people. Budget experience for multi-departments. Presentation skills, and by that I mean that at this level, you're going to be making presentations to whoever the decision maker is, whether that's the owner or a board of directors. And now we're going to start with basic employment knowledge, because at this level, you're going to run into employment law issues. Now, I came from California, I now live in Nevada, and what has partially made me worth so much to my employer is because I worked as a senior level manager in California, actually as a part owner of a business, and I had to know the employment law, because when you mess up with an employee, the numbers start in the 5-digit range, tens of thousands. And if you really mess up, this is in the 6 to 7-digit numbers. That's hundreds of thousands to millions. Okay. I was lucky. Actually, I'll start with when I got pushed up into management, this was my worst skill. And I had to come up to speed very quickly. And during the last, let's say, 20 years, I spend between 2 and 4 weeks a year getting trained in HR issues, because this is the liability of being a manager. By the way, just so everybody understands the law here, your employer could settle out of court with an employee who has a problem. The employee can then turn around and sue you individually, civilly. The rate of loss is 90%, because typically the person who makes the error with the employee is that first level manager. So either the head pro or the multi-departmental manager. Okay, and the first rule that you learn as you move up is, if it smells bad, go to the HR department. Don't talk to the employee. Let the HR department talk to the employee. The next level is senior manager. The senior manager is going to be the accounting manager, the HR manager. You could have an IT department depending on how big. They're going to be senior level people. Again, college degree required. Notice I'm not saying master's degree, I'm saying college degree. Experience running and supervising multiple departments, company-wide budget experience, and now we're really going to get into this. Employment law, rights, knowledge. So while the pandemic was starting here, everybody was in the same position. We were all laying people off because we were shutting down for the 30 or 60 or 90 days. In California, 90 days. And we had to understand how to do it, how to help our employees get the benefits that they've never taken advantage of. Unemployment. Most of my employees had never claimed unemployment, but we had to do it by the book. And again, I didn't do it. My HR department did it. I felt so sorry for these people because they had to lay off or furlough every employee in the company except 3. And those 3 were the owner or GM, the HR director, and the IT director. Okay. Again, as you move up, the critical knowledge to continue to stay current on is employment law, knowledge, and rights. General manager, it's going to require an advanced degree. I put MBA there. I put that there because I have one. Not everybody does. But the reality here is this is a person dealing with the nuts and bolts of the money. And so they need different knowledge. So company budget, employment laws, rights knowledge, communication, presentation skills. Again, folks, do you see a commonality in every one of these? It's called employment law. You're going to have to know it. Again, I wish I was lying to you, but you're going to spend more time dealing with employment issues than you are your job. Okay? The last one's owner. What's the only requirement for an owner? Money. Okay? But often the owner and the general manager are the same. As I became a part owner, I want to make that clear that I didn't own the whole company. I was a part owner. I filled both those roles. And again, very interesting. By the way, as you move higher, your job becomes to mitigate litigation. So whether that's from liability of someone getting hurt at your shop or your installation, your country club, or it's to prevent lawsuits from employment issues, your job is to mitigate litigation. and try to keep it down to a minimum. I was very lucky through my career, but I'll be honest with you, and some of you guys know me, that my wife is an HR expert. She's one of the HR experts for the country, and so I could go home and ask questions. And I learned to do things here, folks. When I didn't know the answer, I said, let me do some research and get back to you. They walked out of my office and I had my wife on speed dial. Okay? So we're going to go back to this, and this has to do with the minimum qualifications again. Do you need more education or experience to get the next job you want? Because if you're going to move jobs twice in the next 5 years, you may need to take some other steps. So our degrees and or experience, they're often used as a way to screen people out when they're looking for this next level of jobs. Again, folks, if you think that this isn't going to happen to you, you need to understand what the law says. It's fine that it's word of mouth and your friend promotes you until someone questions why you got the job and you didn't have a degree, but it was required for the position. Because if you put out that a job requires a degree for a position and you hired someone without that degree, you better be to explain it when someone else who applied for the job has a degree. It's called litigation. It's not pleasant. Okay, I want to make it a point to be very careful with this next one. Higher level positions require continued training to be current. I want to be very clear in this. A year ago, when I tried to retire again, I had a discussion with several of my friends who wanted me to teach a class in February on employment law. And I said, I'm going to be out of the industry for 2 months. I'm no longer current. You need to find someone else. You need to stay current on a lot of this stuff to stay up. Tennis is changing all the time. You need to stay current. That's why USPTA has an education requirement. You need to stay current. Well, as you move up into management, it's even more important to stay current, especially with the laws as they change. And they change at least twice a year, so you need to be aware of that. Okay? And just for reference, people say it's crazy to supervise in California. There are so many laws. It's true. It is crazy to supervise in California. You know what happens 5 years after California adopts these laws? Other states do. Okay, so just be aware, California is sort of on the cutting edge. The other states are not far behind. I've spent a lot of time dealing with Oklahoma law for the last 12 months, and they're not that far behind. So I know Lane is there, and they're not that much further behind. So what is your plan to accomplish this goal? Do you need to go back to school? Do you need to get more on-court training? Can you take some classes and seminars to help you now? All across the country, there are all kinds of opportunities for training. USPTA offers leadership training and on-court training and business training. There are places like Mark McMahon's company that provides leadership training for tennis professionals. The USPTA has a leadership academy. I hear rumors that USTA is going to have a leadership academy. Take advantage of the opportunities that are out there, community colleges. We are in a distance learning environment. Colleges have spent the last years creating what they call virtual college. You don't have to walk on a college campus anymore. It's all on the computer. It's all on demand. You can do this in your off time. Okay?
Alan?
Yes, sir.
Kevin, I've got a question for you. It's clear enough on the job qualifications. When you read a job posting, they'll have the qualifications and then what the employer is seeking beyond that. I've seen instances where the employer is so outlandish in the things that they're asking for in an employee that it causes me to question the integrity of the employer itself. That, I mean, if you took the entire, I mean, and I'm thinking of a specific job posting that was in the industry not that long ago, that if you took the entire world's population and you went down the list, by the time we got to the fourth requirement, you would have eliminated every human. And so it caused me to kind of question the people who would put together something like that. So, I mean, what are your thoughts on employers who are outlandish in what they post, and if that's even it's worth pursuing an employer who would do something like that?
Let's look at it two different ways. One is that they had a specific candidate they were looking at that had those qualifications and were trying to eliminate everybody else. That's one thing. I doubt that's really what happened, Kevin. I think it's much more likely that instead of the HR department creating these job requirements, a senior manager did, and it was pie in the sky. And the reality is, when no one qualifies for that, they rewrite the job description and they have to go out again. That costs money. And if you think like an owner, you start to realize that things that cost money, you're trying to cut those down. So I agree with you that, does it make me look at the employer differently? Sure. But it makes me curious why they would come up with that. I'll just give you an example. They're looking for an accounting director for a HOA for a property management company, and they're looking for a PhD. Why would you look for a PhD in a property management company? That doesn't make sense for me. It barely makes sense for me at a college, okay? And what I'm trying to say to you is, I want to look at the why behind it. And if I'm brought in to look at it, I'm going to ask that question. But what I will tell you, I've learned from my wife, again, she's an HR director. She has supervised cities as large as 1,000 people, that she says, trust the process. And if you trust the process, things tend to work out. But again, if it's that outlandish, it's nuts. And they're just wasting their time and yours.
All right. Thank you.
No problem, Kevin. I hope that answers it.
Yeah.
So we're going to talk about starting small, take one step at a time. I'm going to give Chuck Gill credit for this next statement. They laid a project on me when I first came into the board of directors. I was in charge of helping people get the education requirement, and it was a task I couldn't see steps in. And he said, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. And so now when I work on these large projects, and that's all I really ever work on now, the reality is I have to break those projects into small bite-sized pieces so I can go along. So start small, take one step at a time. Okay? And again, here it is again, write down your goals. Next to my computer, I have a piece of paper with my goals and objectives on it. I don't stop. This is something about me. My friends will tell you, I have a terminal disease. It's called curiosity. It gets me in a lot of trouble because I have a bad habit of asking why. And people don't always take kindly to my curiosity. But you want to know something that's gotten me pretty far in life? Write down your goals, review your goals. They're going to change. The world changes. Your life changes. The whole world changed 11 months ago. Where are we? We're in February. What's the date today? The 11th. We are 4 days shy of 1 year since life changed. Here's the most important thing you maybe will get from me today. Start now. This doesn't mean start a week from today. This doesn't mean start tomorrow. This means start now. And if starting now means I know I need to go back to school to get a little more education because the degree requirement is going to get used against me, then I need to start investigating what options I have to go to a college and get a degree. And I'm going to tell you folks, it will be very frustrating if you're qualified to do the job and you're getting screened out because you don't have a piece of paper that they require. It is very frustrating, okay? So start now, don't wait, do yourself a favor. We're going to talk about non-traditional careers in the tennis industry. Because most of us have come through the tennis teaching industry and worked our way into the head pro. It might be a director's job, but some of these other things are not always as easy to do. College coaches, apologize, that's my dog barking this time. Being a college coach, how many are there at a college? Typically 2. I've been reading about this a lot lately. I've kind of become an expert in the economic divide in American athletics over the last 4 years. But college programs are disappearing about 3 a week right now. They're using the pandemic and the lack of college enrollment to kill college programs. It's frightening how bad it is. Now, it's not just tennis programs, it's all kinds of programs. Colleges like Stanford and UCLA and Harvard and Yale, the big colleges are cutting programs right now, so be careful of that. 2 of my friends, close friends, became manufacturer reps. These are great jobs, by the way. You get to talk tennis all day long. You get to be on the cutting edge of manufacturing and equipment. These are fun jobs, by the way. I always wanted to be a racket designer. I didn't have the engineering background for it. I have a couple friends who are tournament directors. That's all they do for their entire year. They coordinate tournaments, including Indian Wells. And these guys are in a pretty good living. But again, it's 1, maybe 2 people per shop. Agents and lawyers. There are lots of player agents out there. They tend to be lawyers, so just be aware of that. Consultant. Oh, that must be me. Tennis management. I think that's a lot of the people on this call. I would be very surprised if the 50 or 60 people on this webinar aren't already head pros or directors and moving their way up. Again, as you move up into a manager, you may find that you're not on court very much or at all. Several of my friends have been able to keep on-court responsibility. I'm again going to use AJ as the example. He runs Lifetime Fitness, but not everybody gets that opportunity. Speakers and authors. Bill Riddle is on this call somewhere. He's done a lot of speaking. I've done a lot of speaking. There's lots of authors. You can actually earn a pretty good living at this. Faisal is doing it. Again, I've seen Lane speak a lot of times. I've seen Pat and Todd speak. This is a common avenue as you move up through the thing. It's hard to earn a full-time living at it, but it's a good way to supplement your income. Types of tennis employers, and we're going to go through this a little bit, and then we're going to talk about geography a little bit, because when I was on the board of directors for USPTA, and again, they were nice enough to say I was a vice president. I was in the leadership of USPTA for 21 years. My niche is data, so I became the data guy. Gary Tross still calls me Mr. Data. But we made a lot of decisions that were based on data rather than conjecture, sorry. And I don't want to gamble with someone else's money. I'd rather get it from the data. So we're going to talk a little bit about this. Country clubs, private and public. And by that, private country club meaning only members are allowed. Public ones will allow their members to come in and bring guests in. Commercial clubs would be things like Midtown, Lifetime, Equinox. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, that Lifetime is the largest employer of tennis pros in the country. AJ might be to verify that tomorrow for you guys. But again, they're a major power of who hires our pros. Government, cities, counties, park and recs. Park and recs are getting out of the business of providing entry-level lessons. They are building facilities, which is the next one on this, called leased facilities. So a municipality, a city government, or a county government will build a multiple court facility, which is then leased to a private company. And they hope that that leased facility is going to provide entry-level lessons for their community. The problem with this is that when it was with the Park and Recs department, it costs between $3 and $5 an hour on average to have an entry-level lesson. And at the leased facility, that same lesson is $15 to $20. So again, we priced out some of our lower economic people. Let me think about this because it's different now. In the southern part of the United States, HOAs are going to become the largest employer of tennis pros. An HOA is a homeowners association that have leisure activities as part of their facilities. The one I worked at and then managed and then owned part of had equestrian, aquatics, tennis, pickleball, parks, everything under the sun. And they have replaced a lot of what's happened at the city. These facilities are pristine. They are the best of the best. There's one right now that has golf and tennis and aquatics. There's a leaf out of place at my facility. Resorts used to employ a fair amount of tennis pros, and this would be like a hotel in Hawaii, Wailea, who a friend of mine is the head pro at. But the reality is these are becoming fewer and farther between. Academies are out there. We're going to talk formal academy versus someone's got some private course that they teach at. Bolletary, Rick Macy, these are formal academies. Emilio Sanchez, these are all in Florida, by the way, because land is cheap. I can tell you that there are 5 academies in Las Vegas that are in an HOA with 2 courts, and they just use them to teach on. They're very different. ATP, WTA, USTA, and NGB stands for National Governing Body. Every country has one. USPTA or other trade organizations, I won't specify what the other ones are, but USPTA is a major employer. TIA, Tennis Industry Association, the manufacturers and foundations. I'm on a couple boards of foundations, First Break, which is supplies kids with both tennis lessons and after-school tutorial services. That's in Southern California. It's a big one. But here's what I'm going to tell you. These employers are based on geography, where you find, and I said this earlier, you find country clubs on the East Coast. And you might find country clubs inside of HOAs. So I don't want to mention any names. I have several friends who work at country clubs in Florida that are really homeowners association with a country club inside of them. The country clubs tend to be private. They provide good facilities. But again, we're headed towards HOAs, folks. You need to understand that the industry is changing. Commercial clubs tend to be very dominant in the Midwest, both North and South Texas through Minnesota. If you want to know where the headquarters for Lifetime is, it's in Minnesota. Funny place for it. Midtown's out of Chicago. These are the major players. And again, these are big-time employers. But you don't see as much country clubs in those areas. And again, because of weather, the government, counties, parks are closed during the bad weather times of the year. Several people told me it was snowing in their neighborhoods this week. My daughter lives in Denver. It was 10 degrees yesterday. You're not going to go play tennis in 10 degrees with snow on the ground. So you're going to have indoor facilities, and the ones that provide this tend to be the commercial clubs. What you find on the West Coast are the HOAs and municipalities and leased facilities. And so on the West Coast, Southern West Coast, I'm saying Southern California, Arizona, Nevada, those are the employers. In the Pacific Northwest, you do find some country clubs. But the country clubs are public. You find many commercial clubs. And again, the HOAs are to come in. So depending on where you are in the country, it makes a big difference of what the employers are. You need to be aware of that if you're choosing to move from the East Coast to the West Coast, the employers who is hiring tennis professionals is likely to be different. So this next thing is about raising visibility. And most of these jobs, as you move up above, let's say, a head pro to a multi-departmental managers, are word of mouth jobs. I have not applied for a job since 2000. Every job I've gotten has been word of mouth. Someone knew what I was doing or knew of me, and I got a phone call. There was no job application because I was offered the job on the first call. They're not supposed to do that, by the way, but it happens. And so how can you raise your visibility? And the first thing I'm going to talk about is getting involved with USPTA or other organizations. And I'm doing this very specifically because when you supervise 5 people as a head pro, that's a great number. But when you get involved with an organization like USPTA, the Southern Division, you could end up on a committee and be responsible for 1,000 members in your division. You could be a state representative and be responsible for 100 to 200, maybe 300 people. This is a unique opportunity to raise your visibility so people know your name. It's also a great way to get some leadership training. This is very hard to get, and it's fleeting. That these opportunities to move up and get involved are very important. You can't build these skills any other way. I feel very lucky that I was in the leadership with USPTA for the 21 years. I gained a lot of leadership skills that I use to this day, but those don't last forever, and you need to take advantage of those opportunities when they happen. Write and publish, I did this a lot. I had a division president in Southern California named Pam Austin, who made me write for the newsletter every issue for 4 years. And I got good at writing little articles for them. And from that, developed into writing for Advantage Magazine. And from that, started to write for Tennis Magazine and other publications. Again, it's a way to get your name out across the country, across your division. It's important to raise your visibility. Speaking opportunities, that's what I'm doing right now. The key issue is you're making more people aware of you, because right now there's 60 plus people on this webinar, and those were 60 people who didn't know who I was an hour ago. And it's very important to do this. Web presence, and I want to be careful how I do this. I am not talking about Facebook, folks. I might be talking a little bit about LinkedIn, but this is about having a web page that if someone tries to search for your name, it's going to come up with a web page that says who you are and what you do, and have links to other things. So on mine, it will have links to the articles I've done. It will have links to YouTube of things I've taped. Networking is critical. Again, the USPTA Southern Division gives you lots of opportunities to network at conventions, at district events. These are critical so the other people know who you are. Raise your visibility. You can't say it doesn't matter. It does. Because 10 years ago, no one knew who I was across this country, even though I was a master pro. Okay, now you get hurt and can no longer teach on court. What's your plan? So I'm 40 years old. I think I'm indestructible. I was indestructible. I hit a serve and heard an audible sound. That was my rotator cuff falling off my shoulder. And that was the end, folks. I couldn't serve. I was going to have surgery in a matter of weeks. And I lost half my income in 1 minute. I couldn't do anything. And I didn't have a plan. Okay? So here's the truth. At some point, your body will break down. You guys are in the southeast of the country, and a lot of you guys have access to clay courts. And that might buy you 10 more years because it's a lot easier on your legs than the cement I have access to on the West Coast. But the reality is your body has X amount of hours on that tennis court, and we've all abused it. Okay? And I'll give you a way to look at this. If you hit 500 balls an hour, make 500 contacts an hour while you're teaching, you teach 20 hours a week, that's 10,000 balls a week. If you teach 50 weeks a year, that's 500,000 balls a year. If you teach for 40 years, that's 20 million balls. So you can start to put this into real terms. Again, it is not easy on your body. Your body will break down, so you better have a plan B, because it will happen. You might get longer. I have friends who have lasted until their mid-50s on court, but in reality, as you age, you need to reduce how much you teach. And to be honest, when I was the general manager, I didn't expect any of my pros to teach more than 32 hours a week on court. That was the number I gave them. Okay? If they wanted to go beyond that, that was their business, but I didn't want to be involved. Okay? Career change may be forced upon you, and I want you to be prepared that if that happens to you, you have a plan. And that's really why we're doing this today, is we're making sure you have a plan. And Pat, I know I have to stay on schedule. So Pinnacle positions are positions that an employer has one of. There's one head pro. There's one director of leisure activity. There's one accounting manager. There's one general manager. There's one owner. Those are Pinnacle positions. There are not two. When you're a teaching pro, there could be 5 of you. There's not going to be 5 of you as a head pro. There's one. Understand what Pinnacle positions are. Head Pro 1, we went through this, multiple department manager, senior manager, GM. 1, period, not 2. What's going to make you more qualified for the job than someone else? This was a rude awakening for me in my 50s, because I made a friend in Florida who was in his early 30s at the time. He was part of the Youth 30 movement. He was already a director of tennis at 30 when I didn't hit that same job until I was 40. And so I had to step back and say, what made him more qualified for that job at 30 than I was at 40? That individual is now a multiple departmental manager of leisure activity, and he's on his way to being the GM. They don't have a senior manager between he and the GM. He will be the GM within 1 year. We will call him Jose, for lack of a better example. Okay? Pat will know who that is. So here's your individual project. Where do you want to be in 2026? What do you need to be ready for that position? Do you need more education? Might you have to take an intermediary step along the way to get it? In other words, I'm a teaching pro. I want to be a multi-departmental manager. Well, I'm going to have to move to a head pro before I get to that job. And the reality here is, if you're in that position, you're likely to have to take an intermediary step. If you're at a multi-departmental manager, you might not have to get to a senior manager. Who might assist you in this? Kevin, I know you're the mentor expert here. I don't like that word very much. I prefer the word friend. I will have people use that word with my name, calling me a mentor. I'd much rather that they call me a friend, because I learn more from them than they do from me. But in your division, folks, you have so many experts that you can't believe it. Look at a list of your master pros in your division. Every one of those is a resource. You have Kevin and Pat and Todd, and I could go through a list of 20 names in the Southern Division that you have as resources. Call them a mentor. Call them advice. It doesn't matter. They're there to help you. They want to help you. Because here's the funny thing. When you help someone, it doesn't just help them. It helps the individual too. That's why I keep saying I'd rather that they call me a friend than a mentor. Write down your goals. It will help you accomplish them. But this is up to you. This whole thing is up to you of what you're going to do with this knowledge that I'm bringing to you right now. Again, my name is Alan Cutler. I want to say thank you. That is my email address. I am of the email generation, so I prefer if you email me. I will tell you that if you wait and do not get a response from me within 24 hours, you have my permission to fire me, okay? Because I have a policy that no one ever waits 24 hours for a response from me. I didn't say what my educational background was at the beginning of this because I didn't want to. When I got done playing, I went back to college and got a bachelor's and master's in computer science. That's how I became the data guy. 10 years later, I went back and got an MBA. I have more than 40 years of experience with information and technology. And again, I'm a senior management consultant, but understand there is not a job in the tennis industry, teaching-wise, that I have not done. And I think that, I hope that came across today. I'm a tennis player. I will always be a tennis player. Someday I might be good at it if I keep playing, but at the end of the day, I'm just a tennis player, and curiosity is what's got me where I am now, and hopefully it takes me further. If you got questions, I'm happy to answer. And again, if you want to talk individual with me to develop a plan, I'm happy to do that with you. One of the people I helped recently just won Pro of the Year for the organization, Jenny Gray. So again, I've been around a few years.